Ladies and gentlemen, certainly, here's an intro for your motivational speech titled God Says Today, Wait Before You Move, Shi Heng Yi's spiritual warning. Written in the calm, reflective, and powerful style of Shi Heng Yi, there are moments in life when the silence speaks louder than noise. When the path ahead appears clear, yet something deep within us whispers, wait, today is not a day for rushing forward. Today is a day for listening, for standing still, because the movement that comes without alignment is chaos. The decision made without clarity is regret. We are not here to simply react to life, we are here to respond with awareness, and sometimes the most powerful action is not moving. The spiritual path teaches us, before the body moves, the mind must be centered. Before the feet take a step, the soul must be aligned. God does not delay, He directs, and today He is saying, pause, not to stop you, but to prepare you. So this is not a message of fear, it is a message of power. The kind of power that is born in stillness, in trust, and in obedience. Listen closely, because when you wait with faith, you move with purpose. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, achieve more, and move faster, the idea of stillness can seem uncomfortable, even counterproductive. We've been conditioned to believe that success only comes to those who hustle relentlessly, who never pause, who keep going no matter what. But this belief often disconnects us from a deeper truth. Stillness is not weakness, it is divine preparation. There is a kind of strength that grows in silence, a kind of wisdom that is only revealed when we step back and stop trying to control every outcome. When we look at nature, we notice that even the most powerful forces require stillness before movement. A storm gathers quietly before it breaks. A seed remains buried in the soil, motionless, before it sprouts. In martial arts, a master does not move until the timing is perfect. Every deliberate motion is born from calm observation and inner stability. This same principle applies to our lives. We may think we are wasting time by being still, but in truth, we are gathering energy, aligning with clarity, and positioning ourselves for precision. Movement that is not rooted in inner balance becomes reaction, not response. And reactions often lead us off the path meant for us. Many people confuse stillness with laziness, passivity, or fear. But the kind of stillness that carries spiritual power is none of these. It is intentional. It is alert. It is receptive. It is a space where the external noise fades and the internal compass is given room to speak. In moments of confusion, frustration, or urgency, waiting can be the most courageous decision. It's not easy to resist the urge to act, especially when everyone around you is pushing forward. But those who know the deeper ways of life understand, not all movement is progress, and not all silence is stagnation. Stillness teaches you to listen. It deepens your awareness of what's happening beneath the surface. Often, what feels like a delay is actually a divine pause that allows unseen elements to align on your behalf. You may think you're ready, but your spirit might still be catching up. You may want to step forward, but the ground ahead may not yet be firm. Stillness is the space in which preparation happens, preparation you may not be able to see, but which is essential for the journey ahead. In spiritual traditions, the act of waiting has always carried sacred significance. Prophets waited in the wilderness before stepping into their callings. Warriors waited in meditation before going into battle. Masters waited in silence before speaking wisdom. This pause, this gap between the urge to act and the permission to move, is where transformation takes root. The ego resists it, but the soul understands it. Stillness breaks the illusion that we are in control and replaces it with the understanding that we are being guided, prepared, and positioned. When you are still, you allow your mind to settle like muddy water left untouched. In the clarity that follows, your intentions become purer, your thoughts become sharper, and your heart begins to recognize what truly matters. The need to prove something fades, the desperation to rush disappears. What remains is presence, and in that presence, divine guidance can finally be heard. Impatience is a form of inner noise that drowns out the subtle voice of wisdom. When we are impatient, we act from emotion rather than clarity, from urgency rather than purpose. And in that state of mind, we often make choices that are misaligned with our true path. Spiritual growth is not just about knowing what to do, it's about knowing when to do it. Timing matters, and divine timing never rushes. The universe is never in a hurry, yet everything unfolds perfectly. But when we try to force outcomes to control situations before their appointed time, we begin to walk a path that wasn't meant for us. We step ahead of grace, ahead of the lesson, ahead of the blessing. Impatience stems from a lack of trust. We want immediate answers, quick solutions, visible results. But the spiritual path is not transactional, it's transformational. And transformation requires patience. Just as a tree does not bear fruit the moment it is planted, your purpose does not reveal itself the moment you desire it. There is a season for everything, and in between seasons, there is a waiting room. That waiting room is where your character is built, your vision is refined, and your faith is tested. If you run from the waiting, you may escape the discomfort, but you also escape the preparation. Misalignment happens when we act out of sync with the rhythm of our higher self. Imagine a musician who starts playing before the rest of the orchestra is ready. The result is not harmony, but noise. In life, when we push ahead without spiritual alignment, we may achieve things on the surface, but will feel a quiet disconnection beneath it all. There's a subtle emptiness that follows every success born from haste rather than wisdom. And the further we walk on a path not meant for us, the harder it becomes to return to the one that was. Patience allows space for divine orchestration. It's not just about sitting and waiting, it's about staying present, open, and aligned with inner truth. When you're patient, you can hear the guidance that's always available but often ignored. You can sense the right moment to speak, to act, to move. That sense of right timing doesn't come from the mind, it comes from spiritual sensitivity, and that sensitivity is dulled by impatience. The more you rush, the less you feel. The more you push, the less you see. Every misstep caused by impatience carries a cost, not just in time or energy, but in spiritual clarity. When we move too soon, we risk entering battles that aren't ours, or doors that aren't meant to open yet. And even when we win something through impatience, it rarely satisfies because the soul knows it wasn't earned through alignment. True fulfillment is a result of walking in rhythm with your inner truth and the divine flow. Impatience can also cloud discernment. It makes every opportunity seem urgent, every delay feel like failure. But not every open door is meant for you, and not every closed one is a denial. Sometimes the delay is protection. Sometimes the pause is grace. But impatience blinds you to these truths, convincing you that you must act now or lose everything. This is a deception. In reality, what is meant for you cannot be taken from you, but it can be missed if you're not aligned. The spiritual path requires you to slow down, to breathe, and to listen deeply. Only then can you truly walk forward with peace, purpose, and power. Spiritual timing is not emotional timing. Trust the divine clock. Emotions rise and fall like waves, shifting with circumstances, moods, and thoughts. They can be intense, overwhelming, and deeply persuasive, but they are not always truthful indicators of when to act. On the spiritual path, the timing of your actions must be governed by something higher than emotion. It must be rooted in alignment with divine timing, which moves according to purpose, not pressure. When you allow your emotions to dictate your decisions, you often find yourself stepping out of rhythm with the greater flow of life. The divine clock doesn't tick according to human urgency. It follows a pattern of wisdom, of unfolding, of perfect sequencing, even if it doesn't match what your feelings want in the moment. The emotional self often seeks immediate gratification. It wants answers now, movement now, resolution now. But the spiritual self knows that every outcome has its appointed time. Just like the moon waxes and wanes, just like seeds break through the soil only when they are ready, your journey also has seasons. Trusting the divine clock means surrendering your need to control the timeline. It means understanding that just because something feels right emotionally doesn't mean it is right spiritually, not yet. There may be more to learn, more to release, more to prepare before the door opens. When people move according to emotional timing, they often leap into decisions fueled by fear, excitement, or desperation. These choices may seem right in the moment, but later reveal themselves to be premature. This is why patience is a form of spiritual maturity. It allows space for emotions to settle and clarity to rise. When you no longer chase decisions based on emotional urgency, you become available to higher guidance. You learn to wait for peace, not just passion. You learn to sense the difference between the voice of your soul and the noise of your emotions. Spiritual timing is divine orchestration. It puts you in the right place at the right time with the right awareness. This timing is subtle. It doesn't come with fanfare or loud announcements. Often, it arrives in the quiet, knowing the inner confirmation that now is the moment to act. This kind of knowing can't be rushed. It reveals itself when you are fully present, fully listening, and fully surrendered. And the only way to stay aligned with it is to release your attachment to the emotional clock that wants everything to happen immediately. When you trust the divine clock, you begin to see delays differently. What looks like a setback through emotional eyes is often a setup for something greater through spiritual eyes. You begin to recognize that closed doors are not punishments, but redirections. That pauses are not failures, but divine recalibrations. This trust does not come easily. It is forged in the waiting, in the stillness, in the space between longing and fulfillment. It is born from choosing alignment over impulse again and again. Your emotions are valid. They carry messages and reveal parts of your inner world that need attention, but they are not the compass for your life's direction. That role belongs to something deeper, to spiritual discernment, to divine timing, to the quiet wisdom that exists beyond the storm of feelings. By honoring the divine clock, you enter into partnership with a greater intelligence. You step into flow instead of force. You begin to notice how life opens effortlessly when you no longer push through doors that aren't yet ready to open. You stop mistaking delay for denial. You begin to live with rhythm, not resistance. When God says wait, it's a test of faith, not a denial of destiny. Waiting is one of the most difficult disciplines on the spiritual path because it confronts the human desire for certainty and control. In moments when progress seems halted, when answers don't come, when doors remain shut, the soul is not being punished, it is being prepared. The space between the promise and the fulfillment is the training ground where your faith is stretched, your trust deepened, and your identity purified. It is in this space that God refines your intentions, tests your endurance, and removes everything that cannot carry the weight of your purpose. Faith is not proven in moments of clarity, but in seasons of uncertainty. Anyone can trust when the way is clear, when everything is unfolding as expected. But true faith begins when nothing makes sense, when the path forward is hidden, and the only instruction you receive is to wait. This waiting is not passive, it is an act of spiritual obedience. It requires strength to stand still when your emotions demand action. It takes courage to hold on to belief when your circumstances offer no confirmation. And it takes humility to accept that the divine plan may unfold differently than your expectations. When you are told to wait, it is not because God is withholding something good from you. It is because He is orchestrating something greater than what your limited perspective can see. Often, we think we are ready, but readiness is not measured by desire, it is measured by alignment. You may want the outcome, but are you aligned with the wisdom, discipline, and clarity that outcome requires. The waiting period gives you time to become the person who can sustain what is coming. It allows hidden weaknesses to surface and be addressed, old patterns to be broken, and deeper truths to be revealed. Many abandon their path during the waiting season because they interpret the silence of God as rejection, but silence is not absence. It is often the sign of divine presence working beneath the surface. Seeds do not sprout with noise, nor do roots grow with announcement. Growth happens in the hidden, and waiting invites you into the sacred hiddenness where transformation takes place. In the stillness, you begin to realize that faith is not about demanding signs, but about becoming still enough to recognize them when they arrive. Waiting also purifies your intentions. When you cannot rush the process, you begin to examine why you wanted the result in the first place. Were you chasing validation, status, or control, or were you seeking alignment, purpose, and inner fulfillment? The fire of waiting burns away the ego's demands and reveals the soul's true longing. This purification ensures that when the time finally comes to move, you are not moved by desperation, but by purpose. You no longer act to prove something, you act because it is time. Every spiritual journey includes seasons of divine delay. But what seems like a delay is often divine timing working in your favor. If you move too soon, you may find yourself in a place your character cannot sustain. If you act before you're ready, the very thing you desired may become the weight that breaks you. Waiting protects you from arriving before your spirit is mature enough to carry the responsibility. God sees beyond what you can see. He knows the hidden battles that still need to be won inside you before you step into the next chapter. And so when he says wait, it is never to punish you, it is to prepare you. The delay is not a closed door, but a divine pause that builds the foundation beneath the blessing. Silence is often the space where your true direction is revealed. In the modern world, silence has become rare. There is noise everywhere, on our devices, in our minds, in our relationships, and even in our prayers. We seek answers constantly, asking, planning, analyzing, trying to control every outcome. But spiritual guidance does not shout over the noise. It waits for stillness, it waits for presence, and in the silence, when all distractions fade and the ego's voice grows quiet, something deeper begins to speak. This inner voice does not argue, it does not demand, it does not rush, it simply waits for you to notice. True direction is not always about external signs. Often, it comes from within, from a place that cannot be accessed through overthinking or striving. When you sit in silence, you begin to sense what is real beneath the surface of your fears, your ambitions, and your uncertainties. You begin to notice subtle stirrings that were drowned out by noise. You begin to hear the difference between the voice of your emotion and the voice of your soul. In silence, clarity rises like the sun, gradually, not suddenly. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. The mind wants stimulation. The heart wants quick resolution, but if you remain in the silence long enough, the agitation fades and a deeper stillness takes over. In that stillness, intuition sharpens, your awareness expands, you no longer need to chase answers. They begin to emerge naturally from within. This is because silence reconnects you with your inner compass, the part of you that is already in tune with the divine flow. There is a reason why sages, prophets, and spiritual masters all spent time in silence. They understood that to receive divine instruction, the noise had to be cleared, the distractions had to be released, the inner world had to be made spacious. In that space, God speaks, not always with words, but with impressions, confirmations, and shifts in understanding. Sometimes direction does not come as a clear message. It comes as a deep sense of knowing, a peace that settles in your heart, a release of confusion. The problem is that most people avoid silence because it forces them to face what they've been avoiding. In the quiet, you become aware of the inner chaos you carry, but this is not something to fear, it is part of the process. To find true direction, you must first become aware of the noise within. You must observe your thoughts, your assumptions, your emotional reactions. Only by seeing them can you rise above them, and once the mind quiets, once the heart is no longer desperate for answers, direction reveals itself without effort. Silence also teaches patience. It reminds you that you don't have to know everything right now. You don't have to force clarity. You can rest in the unknown, trusting that what you need to know will come when you are ready to receive it. This level of trust can only be built in silence. It is where faith is not something you try to believe. It becomes something you experience. There are decisions in life that logic cannot solve. There are paths that reason alone cannot reveal. For those moments, silence becomes the sacred space where divine wisdom flows. You begin to feel when to move, when to wait, when to speak, and when to let go. And this knowing does not come from outside. It is born from the alignment cultivated in stillness. The silence becomes your teacher, your guide, your mirror. It reflects what is true, not what is loud. It leads you toward what is lasting, not what is urgent. It clears the path for action rooted not in reaction, but in revelation. Waiting refines the soul, aligns the heart, and sharpens your next move. It is not a passive experience, but an active process of transformation that occurs beneath the surface. In the stillness of waiting, something deeper is happening, a shaping, a pruning, a reordering of what matters most. While the outer world sees inactivity, the inner world is undergoing quiet evolution. Every moment you wait in trust is a moment that chisels away impatience, ego, and fear. It is a slow, invisible work, but it is the kind of work that builds inner strength. The soul does not mature through constant motion. It matures through surrender, through sitting in uncertainty without losing peace. In the waiting, the layers that were added by society, comparison, and false ambition begin to fall away. What remains is your essence, your truth, your grounded awareness. This refinement cannot be forced. It must unfold at its own pace, and it requires your cooperation. Not in the form of action, but in the form of surrender. The more you fight the waiting, the more resistance you create. The more you embrace it, the more it transforms you. While you wait, your heart is being aligned. Often, we believe we are ready for what we desire, but our hearts carry attachments, motives, or illusions that would interfere with the integrity of that desire. Waiting creates space to reveal these misalignments. It shows you where your expectations were driven by ego rather than purpose. It helps you distinguish between the craving of the mind and the calling of the soul. This alignment process is subtle. It happens as you reflect, as you release control, as you let go of your timeline and open to divine timing. Your heart begins to align not with what you want to happen, but with what is truly meant for you. This shift changes everything. It turns your prayers from demanding into listening. It turns your focus from outcomes to presence. You stop striving for certainty and start embracing clarity. And clarity does not always come quickly. It grows in silence, in patience, in trust. In this space, your heart softens and strengthens at the same time. It becomes more receptive, more aware, more connected to divine wisdom. As your soul is refined and your heart aligned, your next move becomes sharper. You don't just react to life anymore. You respond with precision. There's a difference between moving out of urgency and moving from inner clarity. Urgent movement often leads to missteps, while aligned movement brings progress without force. When you've allowed the waiting to do its work, you begin to sense when the moment is right. You no longer need external validation to act. You carry a quiet knowing, a sense of peace that accompanies every step you take. The sharpness of your next move comes from discernment. You begin to see through distractions, to recognize false opportunities, to avoid traps disguised as doors. This discernment isn't intellectual, it's spiritual. It comes from having sat with your fears long enough to no longer be ruled by them. It comes from having waited long enough to know the value of timing, so when the opportunity appears, when the inner signal says now, you move not just with confidence, but with alignment. Every moment spent in waiting has the potential to become a moment of preparation, not in the traditional sense of gathering resources or planning steps, but in the deeper sense of becoming the person who is ready. Waiting builds the character, the strength, the spiritual posture needed to hold what you're asking for. You become less attached to the outcome and more devoted to the process. You stop seeing waiting as a punishment and begin to see it as a path that doesn't delay your purpose, but refines it until it's ready to unfold with power, clarity, and divine intention.